I don't know why I'm telling you this now. Maybe because the house feels too quiet tonight. The clock in the hallway ticks louder than my heartbeat, and even the rain sounds like it's whispering things I've tried to forget. My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Granny Mags. I'm 74 years old, and this is the story of the night I stopped pretending everything was fine. When you've lived as long as I have, you learn how to hide pain. You smile when you want to scream. You bake pies when your heart is breaking. You say, "I'm fine," when the truth could tear your family apart. That night, the oven was humming with the smell of apple and cinnamon. The kind my son, David, always loved as a boy. He'd just moved back home after his divorce, and I thought maybe, just maybe, this was my second chance to make things right between us. He'd changed, though. His shoulders were heavier, his voice quieter. There were moments when he'd look at the window and forget to breathe.
Divorce does that.
It empties a man out from the inside. I told him, "You can stay here as long as you need, sweetheart." He smiled, that forced kind of smile that only half reaches the eyes. And I remember thinking he still needs his mother, even now. But what I didn't know was that he hadn't told me everything. And neither had she, his ex-wife, Clara. That evening, he left his phone on the kitchen table. The screen lit up once, twice, the name Clara glowing across it. My chest tightened, but I didn't touch it. It wasn't my place. Later, when he went to shower, I went to tidy his things. It's a mother's habit, I suppose. Folding his shirts, straightening the frame of his wedding photo that he hadn't yet packed away. That's when I saw it. A pale yellow envelope peeking out from under his sweater. My hands froze. It wasn't the envelope itself, it was the handwriting.
Querido, delicate, familiar.
The kind that used to be on every Christmas card we received from her. It said, "For Margaret." Not for David. For me. I wish I could tell you I put it back. That I respected her privacy. But you can't live through 74 years of love and loss and not be curious when someone writes to you after a divorce. So I sat down at the kitchen table, rain still pattering softly on the window, and I opened it. Inside was a single folded sheet, already crinkled like it had been read too many times before. Her handwriting was smaller this time. Shaky. Almost like she'd written it in tears. "Dear Margaret, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't say what I needed to your face. I know you think I left because I stopped loving him, but that's not the truth. The truth is, I left because I loved him too much to stay." I blinked at those words until they blurred. Loved him too much to stay? What kind of love makes a woman walk away like that? I read on. There are things David doesn't know. Things I never had the courage to tell him. And if I tell you now, it's only because I know you'll understand what it means to protect your child, even when it hurts you. My chest started to ache. The clock ticked louder. The pie smell felt suddenly sour. I found out 6 months ago that I'm sick, Margaret. Really sick. The kind that doesn't wait around for goodbyes. I didn't want him to watch me fade away or to feel trapped by my dying. So I told him lies. I made him hate me. I made him believe I was leaving for another man. My hands began to tremble so badly, the paper fluttered. Tears fell onto the ink. I could almost hear her voice in the kitchen, the same voice that used to laugh while helping me knead dough, or whisper secrets about David's silly habits. And now she was gone, not because she stopped loving him, but because she was dying. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run to my son and tell him the truth, shake him, hold him, fix it. But how do you tell your child that the pain he's been drowning in for months was built on love, not betrayal? I folded the letter, tucked it back into the envelope, and just sat there. My reflection in the kitchen window looked like a ghost. The pie timer rang, a shrill, cheerful sound in the middle of heartbreak. I turned it off, and for the first time in years, I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. The kind of crying that comes from the gut, from all the things you've ever lost at once. Because it wasn't just about her. It was about all the things I'd done in my own life to protect the people I loved. All the lies I'd told for the sake of someone else's happiness. And I realized we women, we mothers, we carry too many secrets under our skin. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat by the window with the letter in my lap and watched the rain blur the streetlights. I thought about Clara, about David, about the way life gives and takes without asking permission. When David came down in the morning, his eyes were puffy. He tried to act normal, kissed my cheek, poured coffee, mumbled about looking for a new apartment. I wanted to tell him everything right there. But when I opened my mouth, my voice cracked. He looked at me, concerned.
Mom?
You okay? And I smiled. The same kind of smile I'd given my husband years ago when I found out about his affair and said nothing for the sake of our family. The kind of smile that hides more than it shows. Just tired, sweetheart, I said softly. Just didn't sleep well. The days after that blurred together. He'd leave for work, and I'd find myself in his old room, staring at the letter like it was a living thing. Sometimes I'd whisper to it, as if she could hear me. Why didn't you tell me sooner, Clara? I would have helped you. I would have been there. One afternoon, I even tried to write back, to a ghost. But what do you say to someone who's gone? Dear Clara, I forgive you. Dear Clara, you broke my son to save him? Dear Clara, you broke me too? None of it felt right. I think the hardest part wasn't the letter itself. It was realizing that she'd trusted me, to carry this truth. And that's when the guilt started. Because I began to wonder if I'd ever truly seen her, or if I'd just seen the version of her I wanted for my son. The perfect wife. The kind daughter-in-law. But beneath it all, she was just a frightened woman dying alone, trying to protect someone she loved more than herself. And now, every time I hear my son talk about how she ruined his life, I feel the lie sitting heavy in my chest. I want to tell him. God, I want to tell him. But I can't. Not yet. Because what if it breaks him all over again? Sometimes, late at night, I walk past his room. He's sleeping, face turned toward the window, the same way he did when he was 5. I whisper things I wish he could hear. Your Clara loved you, darling. She didn't leave you, she left the pain. And sometimes I think I hear her voice too, soft, distant, telling me to hold on a little longer. Maybe one day I'll tell him. Maybe one day I'll show him the letter and let the truth set him free. But not tonight. Tonight, the house is too still, and my heart is too fragile. If you've ever had to keep a secret that wasn't yours to tell, you'll understand what I mean when I say it eats you alive quietly, one heartbeat at a time. The kind of pain no one sees. And as I sit here, the rain stopped. The sky outside is gray and soft. Somewhere, a bird sings like nothing ever happened. I wish healing were that easy. I wish love didn't leave letters like this behind. But it does. And now that you know my story, if you've ever felt a heartbreak like this, please hit the like button. I just need to know I'm not the only one. You know, when people talk about love these days, they make it sound so quick. Like something you can order, try, and return if it doesn't fit. But real love, the kind that leaves fingerprints on your heart, it takes time. It grows like ivy, slowly wrapping around your life until you can't tell where you end and it begins. That's what it was like watching David and Clara in the beginning. I can still see it, the first time he brought her home. It was spring, and my garden was alive again after a long, gray winter. Tulips stood proud near the fence, and the old wooden swing creaked in the wind. I remember standing by the kitchen window, wiping my hands on my apron, when I saw them walking up the path together. He was nervous. I could tell from the way he kept adjusting his shirt collar. She, on the other hand, looked calm.
Poised.
Her hair was tied back with a simple blue ribbon, and she wore that kind of smile that doesn't beg for attention, just quietly owns the room. When they reached the door, she hesitated. What if she doesn't like me? She whispered. And he laughed, soft and reassuring. Ma likes everyone who brings good manners and a healthy appetite. I chuckled when I opened the door and said, Then you're already halfway there, dear. She blushed. That was the first time I saw it. The way David's eyes softened when he looked at her. Like he'd finally found something he didn't even know he'd been searching for. They were inseparable that summer. He'd mow the lawn while she sat on the porch steps, reading aloud from her mystery novels. Sometimes she'd tease him. You missed a spot, Mr. Perfect. And he'd grin, throw a handful of grass clippings at her, and she'd pretend to pout. I remember one evening, as the sun dipped low, they came in holding hands. He had that proud glow about him, the kind men get when they think they've found forever. "Mom," he said, "Clara's thinking of quitting her job at the firm. She wants to start her own bakery." I raised an eyebrow. "A bakery? You mean those lemon tarts you keep stealing from her kitchen aren't just for fun?" She laughed. "I've always loved baking. It's the only time the world feels quiet." Something about the way she said it made me pause. There was a stillness in her eyes, like she carried a kind of silence that wasn't born from peace but from survival. I didn't know it then, but that silence would come back to haunt us. When they got married, the whole town came. The church was small, the air smelled of lilies, and the sunlight spilled through the stained glass like heaven itself was watching. I cried, of course, every mother does. But it wasn't the fancy vows or the perfect photos that made me tear up. It was the moment right after the ceremony, when they looked at each other and forgot everyone else existed. He brushed a tear off her cheek and whispered something. I couldn't hear what. She laughed through her tears. That sound, it stayed with me. It was the sound of hope. After the wedding, they moved into the little house near the river. It was old, creaky, and smelled faintly of pine. Every Sunday, they'd come over for lunch. Clara would bring homemade bread, warm, soft, always slightly uneven because, she'd say, perfection is boring. We'd sit around the table, me, David, and Clara, eating, laughing, teasing. She'd call me Ma after only a few months, and that melted me faster than butter on a skillet. For a while, everything felt right. But even in the brightest homes, shadows find their corners. It started small, whispers I pretended not to hear. A missed call at dinner. A sigh that lasted too long. One afternoon, I stopped by their house unannounced to drop off some jam. The curtains were half closed, and the smell of burnt cookies hung in the air. When I knocked, it took Clara a moment too long to answer. Her eyes were puffy. She smiled, but her hands trembled when she took the jar. "Everything okay, dear?" I asked. "Of course," she said quickly, forcing cheer. "Just tired. You know how it is." I nodded, but something in my gut twisted. Later that day, I told David I'd seen her. He brushed it off. "She's just stressed, Mom. She's been overworking herself again." He said it with love, the kind of love that's blind in all the right ways. There was one evening I'll never forget. It was late autumn, and the sky had that orange-pink glow that makes everything look like a memory, even while it's happening. We were all in my kitchen again. I was making stew, Clara was chopping vegetables, and David was fiddling with the old radio that never stayed tuned. Suddenly, Clara nicked her finger with a knife. A small drop of blood appeared, and she froze, completely still. I rushed over, grabbed a cloth, but she pulled away sharply, whispering, "Don't. It's fine." The way she said it, too quick, too defensive, startled me. David looked at her, confused. "Honey, it's just a cut." She forced a laugh, too loud.
"Ay fine."
"Really?" Then she turned away, shoulders shaking slightly. He followed her, but she said something quiet. I couldn't make it out. A few seconds later, she came back smiling again, pretending nothing had happened. But her hands never stopped trembling after that. The next few months blurred. They traveled less, laughed less. The visits became shorter. Sometimes she'd call me just to talk. The kind of conversations that had more silence than words. Once she said, "Do you ever feel like life punishes you for being happy, Ma?" I remember pausing mid-dishwash, the warm water running over my hands. "No, dear," I said softly. "I think life just tests how much happiness you can hold before it spills." She was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, "I think mine's already spilling." I didn't understand then. I thought she meant stress. Marriage pressure. The usual storms. If I'd known what she was really facing, I would have held her tighter that day. There was one morning, bright and cold, when David showed up at my door alone. His face was pale, his eyes red. He didn't say a word at first, just handed me his wedding ring. "She left," he said flatly. "She said she can't do this anymore." I remember the sound of the wind rattling the windows, the smell of burnt toast from the kitchen. Everything ordinary, except for that one moment that wasn't. She'll come back, I whispered, though I didn't believe it. Sometimes people just need space. He shook his head.
No.
She said she's in love with someone else. The words sliced through the air like cold glass. I wanted to tell him that can't be true, that I'd seen the way she looked at him, that love like that doesn't vanish overnight. But he was already breaking, and mothers, we pick up the pieces quietly. I held him. He didn't cry. He just sat there, staring at the floor like the world had gone silent. After that, everything changed. The laughter that used to fill this house became echoes. He stopped baking with me. He stopped smiling altogether. I tried to reach out to her, called, wrote, even visited her parents' house once. No answer. It was like she'd vanished into thin air. Sometimes, at night, I'd sit by the window and think about her. The way she used to hum while stirring batter, or the way she'd sneak extra sugar into David's coffee when she thought I wasn't looking. I missed her. Not just for his sake, for mine too. She'd become the daughter I never had. And deep down, I felt something wasn't right. People don't just erase themselves from love. Not that completely. One afternoon, about 3 months after she left, I found one of her old scarves in the laundry room. Pale yellow, soft as breath, still carrying the faint scent of lavender. I sat there on the floor holding it, and for a moment it felt like she was in the room again. Then I noticed something, a faint smudge of ink near the edge, like someone had brushed it with a pen. I leaned closer. It was a single word, half faded. Sorry. I don't know if she'd written it herself or if it was some coincidence, but it stayed with me, like a whisper from a ghost. As the months rolled on, David moved back in. He said it was just until he got back on his feet, but I could see it in his eyes. The man he'd been was gone, replaced by someone quieter, more fragile. He'd sit on the porch in the evenings, staring at nothing. Sometimes I'd bring him tea. He'd thank me, but his voice would trail off before he finished the word. I tried to keep things normal, baking pies, humming old tunes, filling the silence with small comforts. But grief doesn't respect comfort. It lingers like smoke after a fire. And that's where part one began, the night I found her letter. But before that night, before that letter shattered the illusion, I still believed love could heal everything. I still believed some wounds just needed time. There was one particular evening, maybe a week before I found it, that I keep replaying in my head. David came home late. The house was dim except for the lamp in the corner. He looked tired, the kind of tired that sits deep in the bones. I asked, "Long day?" He nodded.
Yeah.
"Just weird, Mom. I thought I saw her car today." My hand paused mid-stir of the soup. "Oh," I said carefully.
Yeah.
"Same model, same color. Parked near the river. But when I got closer, it was someone else." He gave a hollow laugh. "Guess I'm seeing ghosts now." He didn't know how close he was to the truth. I watched him eat quietly, pushing food around his plate. Then he looked up at me, eyes softer than they'd been in months. "You think people ever stop loving someone, Mom?" I thought about that for a moment, about my husband, about the secrets I'd buried. And I said, "No, sweetheart. I think we just learn how to carry the love differently." He smiled faintly. "You always know what to say." But as he walked away, I noticed his hand brush against the edge of his sweater, the same sweater where that envelope had been tucked. And for the briefest second, something in me stirred. A whisper. A warning. Something I didn't understand yet. That night, the house felt unusually still. The clock ticked slower. The air heavier. I should have known something was coming. Because that night, something changed, though I didn't know it yet. For days after I found that letter, I walked around like a ghost in my own house. I'd fold laundry I didn't remember washing, boil water, and forget why. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the mirror and not recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes looked haunted, like she'd seen something she wasn't meant to. I kept asking myself, why me? Why had Clara written to me instead of him? Why trust an old woman with such a truth? But deep down, I knew the answer. Because mothers keep things safe. We guard secrets like we guard our children. even the ones that burn. The envelope stayed hidden inside the bottom drawer of my nightstand, beneath a stack of old photographs. Every night, I'd open that drawer, stare at the edge of it peeking out, and close it again. I couldn't throw it away, but I couldn't read it again either. Then one morning, David came downstairs holding a cup of coffee. His hair was messy, his eyes tired. He looked like the boy he used to be, back when scraped knees were his biggest worry. "Morning, Mom," he said quietly. "Morning, sweetheart. You sleep okay?" He shrugged. "I guess. Had another dream about her." I froze. "Clara?" "Yeah," he said, sitting down. She was standing by the river. Same place we used to walk every Sunday. She didn't say anything, just smiled. And then she was gone. He chuckled weakly. Guess my brain's trying to torture me in 4K now. I tried to smile, but my throat tightened. He didn't know. He didn't know she was really gone. And not the way he thought. I wanted to tell him then, but when I opened my mouth, my voice came out as a whisper. "Maybe she's trying to tell you something, darling." He frowned. "Like what?" I shook my head. Maybe that she loved you more than you'll ever understand." He blinked, confused. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "Nothing," I said too quickly. "Forget I said anything." He looked at me a moment longer, then sighed and stood up. "You're acting weird lately, you know that?" "I'm just tired," I said again. It was becoming my favorite lie. That afternoon, he went out for groceries, and I finally gave in. I pulled the letter out again. The paper felt thinner than before, fragile, like it could disintegrate if I breathed too hard. I reread every word, every curve of her handwriting, hoping to find something I'd missed the first time. Some hidden message, some clue. But this time I noticed something. At the very bottom, in faint pencil, almost invisible under the last line, she'd scribbled a single phrase. "If he ever finds this, please tell him to check the blue box." I frowned. Blue box? What blue box? I searched the envelope, nothing. Looked around the house. Nothing blue except the vase on the mantel and the cookie tin in the pantry. But something in me said keep looking. That night, after David went to bed, I tiptoed into the guest room, his old room, the one he was using again. His suitcase sat open by the closet. A pile of papers on the desk. A sweater draped over the chair. I didn't mean to snoop, but I had to know. I lifted the sweater, and there it was. A small blue metal box, about the size of a book, with a tiny silver latch. My breath caught. I knelt down, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. It was heavier than it looked. I whispered to myself, "Clara, what did you do?" I didn't have the key, but I knew where David kept his old coin tin, the one he used to lock when he was a teenager. He never changed the hiding spot. I found the little key taped under his nightstand. I hesitated for a full minute before turning it. The click sounded like thunder in that quiet room. Inside were letters, dozens of them, neatly folded, tied together with a piece of white string. And on top of them, a small photograph of David and Clara taken at the riverbank. She was laughing, holding his hand. He was looking at her like she was the only person in the world. But beneath that photo was something else, a hospital envelope. My fingers went cold. The hospital name printed across it was St. Mary's Oncology Center. I opened it, and there it was, a diagnosis sheet. Her name, her date of birth, the word stage 4 ovarian cancer. The air left my lungs. I couldn't breathe. The room spun. I grabbed the edge of the table, trying not to fall. Every word of her letter came rushing back. I left because I loved him too much to stay. She hadn't been lying. She'd been dying. I sat there for what felt like hours, surrounded by her secrets. Every letter, every envelope, dated months apart. Letters she'd written to him, but never sent. I unfolded one. "My love, I wish I could tell you the truth. I wish I could let you hold me while there's still time. But I see the fear in your eyes when you think about forever, and I can't make forever smaller for you. You deserve a life not built around hospitals and slow goodbyes." My tears fell faster than I could wipe them. Another letter. I wanted to leave you with anger, not pity.
You'll heal faster that way.
Hate me if it helps you move on. But know that even when you do, I'll still be somewhere loving you quietly. I covered my mouth to stop the sob from escaping. My shoulders shook. I had to close the box, but my hands wouldn't move. It was like the weight of her love had nailed me to the floor. That's when I heard footsteps. David's voice. Mom, what are you doing? My heart dropped. He was standing in the doorway, hair tousled, confusion turning to something sharper as he saw the box. Where did you get that? I froze. I found it. I didn't mean to. Why were you going through my things? His voice cracked. David, listen to me. He stepped forward, snatched the box from the table, and looked inside. His eyes darted over the envelopes, the photo, the hospital papers. He went pale. What the hell is this? He whispered. My throat tightened. It's Clara. She wrote to me before she. He cut me off. You knew? The word hit me like a slap. David, please, I just found out. I was trying to understand. He shook his head, eyes wild. You read her letters? You read my letters. They weren't, I stammered. They weren't yours, darling. She wrote them for you, but never sent them. She wanted you to move on. Move on, he shouted, voice breaking. You think this helps me move on? Knowing she was dying alone while I thought she was cheating on me? I reached for him. David, she loved you. Every word in there. Don't, he snapped, stepping back. Don't you dare talk about love. You should have told me the second you found out. I could barely speak. I didn't know how. He turned away, fists clenched. All this time I hated her. Do you know what that does to a man? To hate the one person you'd have died for. Tears filled my eyes. She wanted to protect you. She didn't want you to see her suffer. I didn't need protection, he shouted, voice shaking. I needed her. The silence that followed was unbearable. I could hear his breathing, sharp, uneven. Mine wasn't much better. He sank onto the edge of the bed, head in his hands. She was dying, he whispered, over and over. She was dying, and I didn't even call her. I knelt beside him, my voice breaking. It wasn't your fault, sweetheart. He looked up at me, eyes red and raw.
No, Mom.
It's yours. The words pierced through me like glass. I didn't argue. I couldn't, because, in a way, maybe he was right. I'd kept the truth too long, waiting for the perfect moment that never came. And now, the moment had exploded in both our faces. For a long time, he didn't speak to me. He left the room, slammed the door, and all I could do was sit there staring at the box, the blue box that held both love and destruction inside it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to undo it. But how do you undo a truth like that? I gathered the letters carefully and placed them back inside. My hands were shaking too much to tie the string, so I just closed the lid. And for a moment, I could almost hear Clara's voice again, faint, like wind through the curtains. Be gentle with him, Margaret. He doesn't know how to grieve yet. My tears came quietly this time.
No sobbing, no checking.
Just quiet, steady rain down my cheeks. I sat there until morning light crept through the curtains, turning everything gold. It should have felt warm. It didn't. That's when I noticed something else. One letter had slipped out from the pile and fallen to the floor. It was sealed, and across the front, in the same fragile handwriting, were the words, "For David, when he's ready." I picked it up, my fingers trembling. I couldn't open it. That wasn't my place anymore. But I knew when the time came it would either heal him or destroy him. And maybe both. I know some of you watching this might wonder why I'm telling you all this. Why dig up old wounds when they've already scarred over? Because secrets rot in silence. And love, real love, doesn't die just because someone does. It lingers, waiting for truth to set it free. So if you're still here, if you've been listening to every word I've said, stay with me till the end. What I found next still keeps me awake at night. That night, after he'd stormed out, I sat alone in the dark. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint creak of the floorboards as they cooled. I thought about calling him, about apologizing. But what words could I use? I'm sorry I tried to protect you. I'm sorry love hurts like this. None of it felt enough. Then, from the hallway, I noticed something, a faint light coming from under his bedroom door. He was back. I walked slowly, quietly, and pressed my ear against the wood. I could hear his voice, low, trembling. He was reading one of the letters aloud. You'll hate me for a while, Clara's voice echoed through his broken whisper. But one day you'll understand. Love isn't about holding on. It's about letting go with grace. He stopped reading, and I heard him cry, not the loud, angry kind of cry. The kind that sounds like a man trying to remember how to breathe. I leaned against the wall, tears spilling silently. For the first time since she left, he wasn't angry. He was grieving. Finally, truly grieving. And I think, in that moment, she finally reached him. When he came out a while later, he didn't look at me. He just walked past, box in hand, toward the porch. The night air was cool, the stars faint. I followed him quietly. He set the box down, opened it, and one by one began to burn the letters in a small metal bowl. I wanted to stop him, but I didn't. The flames flickered against his face, red, gold, soft. When the last letter turned to ash, he whispered something I'll never forget. Goodbye, my love. He turned to me then, eyes glistening. She didn't deserve to die alone, Mom. I nodded, my throat tight.
No.
But she died loving you. He looked away, then back at the fire. I think I know that now. The wind picked up, carrying the ashes into the night. For a moment, it almost looked like her laughter again. Light, fleeting, beautiful. And I realized something. Betrayal isn't always about lies. Sometimes it's about truths we're too afraid to tell. And that fear, that silence, is what breaks us. When morning came, I didn't rush to make breakfast. I didn't hum the old tune I usually did when I brewed my tea. The house felt colder that day, as if it knew the truth I had uncovered. The letter still sat folded on the kitchen table, stained slightly at the edge with my tears from the night before. I couldn't bear to touch it again, yet I couldn't look away either. It was as if it held a pulse, a quiet, cruel heartbeat reminding me that love and lies can share the same breath. I remember staring out the window at the maple tree in the yard. Its leaves had turned a fiery red, the kind that usually brings me comfort. But that morning, they looked like flames. Burning quietly, controlled, beautiful, but dangerous. That's how I felt inside. Mark was still asleep in the guest room, his old bedroom. The one I had repainted in warm beige when he moved back in. I had placed family photos on his desk to make him feel loved again, his wedding picture, his graduation, even the one of him holding his little boy when he was born. I almost laughed bitterly thinking about it. I had built this room out of love, and yet love had become the very thing that was tearing me apart. When he finally came out, hair messy, eyes still tired from another sleepless night, I just smiled faintly. "Good morning, Mom," he said, rubbing his eyes. "Morning," I whispered, handing him a cup of coffee. My hands didn't shake anymore. I was too tired for that. He sat down, glancing at me, then at the letter on the table. My heart stopped. His gaze lingered for just a second too long. "Who's that from?" he asked casually, taking a sip. I smiled, the kind of smile that hides a storm. "Oh, just something from the past," I replied softly. He nodded, not pushing. And that was the first moment I realized something. Guilt makes people quiet. Innocence speaks freely. But guilt studies your every word, afraid of what you might know. That's when I decided I wouldn't confront him yet. I'd wait. I'd watch. And I'd let the truth speak for itself. That day, I went through every corner of my mind, remembering the years that led here. The quiet nights when his ex-wife, Claire, would call me crying. The times she'd come over, whispering things like, "He's not himself lately," or "He's distant, but I don't know why." I had brushed it off as the usual marital storm. Every couple goes through it, I'd told her. But now her letter made it all make sense. Her words still echoed in my head. "He didn't just betray me. He betrayed the promise he made to you." What promise? I couldn't stop wondering. What could my son have done that would make her write something so final, so filled with both love and resignation? I searched through the drawers that evening, my fingers trembling slightly as I opened the one by the hallway, the one where he used to keep his old things. Bills, documents, random junk. And there it was, a small, locked metal box I hadn't seen before. My heart raced. I didn't want to be the kind of mother who snoops, but that letter had opened a wound too deep to ignore. The box was cold against my hands as I lifted it. Heavy. Important. I tried the small keys hanging on the key rack. None fit. But as I turned it over, I saw something taped underneath, a spare key. My son had always been predictable like that. It clicked open with a faint metallic sound. Inside were letters, receipts, and photos. My breath caught when I saw them. Claire's handwriting. Notes between them. Then a bank statement. And then, the real blow, a signed agreement transferring part of her inheritance into a joint account under Mark's name. The date on it? 3 months before their separation. I sank to the floor, the paper slipping from my hands like dying leaves. That was the moment everything inside me shifted. The mother in me wanted to cry, to hold my son, and demand an explanation. But the woman in me, the one who had lived through years of disappointment, of sacrifice, of forgiving too easily, she woke up. I folded the documents neatly, slid them back into the box, and placed it exactly where it had been.
But I didn't lock it this time.
I wanted him to know someone had seen it. That evening, as we sat for dinner, I could feel his eyes on me. I didn't say a word, just served the soup, placed his bowl gently in front of him, and ate in silence. He tried to make small talk. "Mom, the job interview went well today," he said, forcing a smile. I nodded, taking a slow sip of soup. "That's good, dear. You always were good at convincing people of things." The spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. He looked up, confused.
What do you mean by that?
I smiled faintly. "Oh, nothing. Just you've always had a way with words." His eyes narrowed slightly. He knew. I could see it. That flicker of panic, that stiffness in his jaw. Guilt again, it has its own language. That's when I realized this wasn't just about Claire's pain anymore. This was about the truth. About my son's choices, and the man he had become. And I was done pretending not to see it. Don't blink now, what happened next changed everything. The next morning, I called Claire. Her voice shook when she picked up. "Mrs. Collins?" "Yes, dear. It's me." There was silence on the line. Heavy. Loaded. I didn't think you'd ever call me," she whispered. "Well," I said calmly, "sometimes it takes losing everything to find the truth." We met later that week at the cafe near the park. She looked tired, thinner than before, eyes red, but still holding that quiet strength I'd always admired. I placed the folded letter on the table. "I read it," I said. She froze, eyes filling with tears. "I didn't mean for you to." "It's all right," I interrupted gently. "Sometimes the truth finds who it needs to." We talked for hours. She told me about the money, about how Mark had promised to invest it for their child's future, how he'd convinced her that he knew what he was doing. But the money was gone within months, lost to gambling and poor decisions he'd never confessed to me. And when she'd found out, he'd left. Accused her of being the reason everything fell apart. I listened quietly, every word carving deeper into me. I wanted to scream, but instead I placed my hand on hers. "You're not the only one he hurt," I said softly. That day, I decided that if my son couldn't face his truth, I would make sure he did. When I came home that evening, he was pacing in the living room. The metal box was open on the coffee table. "Why did you go through my things?" he demanded, voice tight, defensive. I met his eyes steadily. "Because I raised you better than this, Mark." His face twisted, a mixture of anger and shame. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly." I cut in. "I understand that the woman who loved you lost everything because she trusted you. I understand that your son won't have his college fund because of your choices. And I understand," I added quietly, "that I can't keep protecting you from the consequences anymore." He fell silent, eyes darting, searching for words. but there were none left. In the days that followed, I moved carefully, calmly. I helped Claire document everything, the receipts, the transfers, the lies. And when the time came, I made sure she had what she needed to take legal action. I didn't do it out of vengeance. I did it out of love, the hard kind of love, the kind that stops enabling and starts healing. Mark tried to talk to me after that. Tried to twist the story, to beg, to cry. But I just listened, eyes steady, heart heavy but unmoving. "Mom, please," he said one night, breaking down at the door. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted to fix things." I reached out, placed my hand gently on his cheek. "Then start fixing them now, son. Tell the truth." Weeks passed. The legal process began. Claire stayed strong, and for the first time, I saw in her the kind of courage I had always wished my son would have. And in the silence of my home, I learned something too. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Sometimes, it means stepping back and letting life deliver its own justice. I still made his favorite soup every now and then, just in case he came by. Because no matter how broken things became, a mother's love doesn't vanish. It only changes shape. But that look in his eyes, the moment he realized I wasn't on his side anymore, that was the day he truly met himself. And I think that was the beginning of his redemption. If you've ever had to choose between love and truth, between protecting someone and letting them face what they've done, you'll understand why I did what I did. Because sometimes justice doesn't shout. It whispers. It waits. It arrives softly, like dawn after a long, cold night. And that night was finally over. It's been almost 2 years now. The maple tree outside my kitchen window has gone through 2 full cycles of seasons, bright green, fiery red, bare and quiet, then blooming again. Sometimes I think it's teaching me how to start over without saying a single word. The mornings are quieter these days. I wake before the sun, put on the kettle, and let the sound of boiling water fill the stillness. There was a time when that sound used to make me smile because it meant another day of making breakfast for my son, asking him about work, pretending everything was fine. Now it's just me, my teacup, and the silence. But it's a peaceful kind of silence. Not the heavy one that comes from sadness, the kind that feels like acceptance. Sometimes I still set 2 cups on the table out of habit. One for me, one for him. Then I pause, stare at that second cup, and whisper softly to myself, "You don't need 2 anymore." It's strange how healing begins, not with big gestures, but with small acknowledgments like that. After the truth came out, everything changed. Claire won the case. Not out of spite, but for her son's future. I stood beside her in court, silent but steady. Mark didn't look at me once. I think he couldn't. Shame can be a heavier chain than any punishment. When it was all over, Claire hugged me. "You saved me," she whispered. But she was wrong. I hadn't saved her. I'd simply stopped losing myself to silence. Mark moved away shortly after. A small apartment somewhere 2 towns over. I know because I helped him find it. Despite everything, I couldn't let him leave without at least knowing where he'd sleep that night. I packed him some of his old shirts, folded them neatly, and slipped a note inside one of the pockets. It said, "You can always come home, but only when you've truly come clean." I haven't heard from him since. Not really. Just the occasional message on holidays. "Merry Christmas, Mom," or "Hope you're well."
No apologies.
No long explanations. But I can hear the guilt behind every word. And maybe that's enough for now. The house feels bigger these days. Quieter, yes, but it also breathes easier. I've filled the empty spaces with little things that bring peace. New curtains, soft music, fresh herbs growing on the windowsill. It's amazing how light feels different when you stop living under the weight of unspoken truths. I started volunteering at the community library again. Every Thursday afternoon, I read to children, stories about courage, forgiveness, and choices. The little ones listen with wide eyes, their small hands clutching the edges of picture books. Sometimes, as I turn a page, I see Mark's face in them. Curious, innocent, full of wonder before the world taught him to hide behind pride. And in those moments, I forgive him all over again. Not because he deserves it, but because I do. One evening, I baked an apple pie, the same kind I used to make when Mark was little. The smell filled the house, warm and familiar. For a second, I almost called out his name like I used to. But instead, I cut one slice, wrapped it in foil, and placed it on the windowsill. It's an old tradition my mother taught me. Always leave a piece for the past, she used to say. It keeps the heart humble. The pie cooled as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting golden light through the glass. And in that moment, I realized something simple yet profound. Healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about learning to sit beside it, sip your tea, and not feel broken anymore. Sometimes people ask me if I regret helping expose my son's mistakes. The truth? Every day, a little. But regret and righteousness can live in the same heart. I did what was right, but that doesn't mean it didn't hurt. There are nights when I wake up and imagine him as a boy again, running through the hallway, holding a paper airplane, shouting, "Look, Mom, it flies." And then I blink, and the house is quiet again. It's strange, love doesn't fade just because trust does. It lingers softer, wiser, sometimes a little distant, but always there. The neighbors still ask about him sometimes. "How's your boy doing, Margaret?" they'll say. I just smile and answer, "He's finding his way." Because that's what I believe. Deep down, beneath all his mistakes, he's still searching for redemption. And maybe, someday, when he's ready, he'll walk up that path again, past the maple tree, and knock on this old wooden door. And when that day comes, I'll open it. Not because I've forgotten, but because I've learned that love can be both memory and mercy. Last month, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name written in familiar handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single page. "Mom, I'm sorry. I know words can't fix what I did, but I'm trying to be better. I've been going to counseling, working again, and I'm saving for Ethan's education. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you still think of me sometimes when you look at that tree." I read it 3 times before I cried. Not from pain this time, but from a quiet, unexpected relief. Maybe redemption doesn't need to be seen. Maybe it just needs to begin. I placed that letter right beside Claire's old one in the same wooden box. 2 letters, one that broke me, and one that began to mend me. Both part of the same story. Every night, before bed, I open my window and let the cool air in. The scent of the maple tree drifts through. Earthy, crisp, alive. It smells like change. Like forgiveness growing roots. Sometimes I whisper a prayer. Not for what I lost, but for what I learned. That forgiveness isn't a gift you give someone else. It's the weight you finally lay down for yourself. That love can be flawed and still be real. And that sometimes the only way to save someone is to stop saving them. I know life won't give me a fairy tale ending. My son won't magically return tomorrow with flowers and apologies. But that's okay. Real life isn't about neat endings. It's about surviving the messy middles with grace. And when I walk past that maple tree now, I touch its bark and smile. It's scarred in places, where branches broke and healed. But it's still standing.
Strong.
Beautiful. Forgiving.
Just like me.
If you've listened to my story this far, thank you. Sometimes, all an old woman wants is to be heard, not pitted, not judged, just understood.
Did you feel her pain?
Tell me what city you're listening from. I love reading your stories. And if this touched your heart, subscribe and stay with me for more true-feeling life journeys. Because maybe, somewhere between heartbreak and healing, we can all find a little bit of ourselves again.